Our presentation is on basically how to build like a strong brand as a small business. So a little bit about myself, like my name's Sydney Huk. I've been in business for a while. I've been in corporate business development for like 10 plus years. In the last 3 years, I've actually spent specifically in branding at Startup Marketing Solutions with Emily Bassett. I also work recently, like over the last year, with Local Street Marketplace as kind of their creative. So that's kind of a little bit about myself and my role in branding and helping businesses for the last few years. What is branding is going to be kind of the first thing that we're just talking about. So branding is the process of creating a unique identity for a business. This can include your name, like your logo, your design, elements like graphics, vectors, little bits that you share with like on your media, and your overall images and presentation as a business that distinguish yourself. So what we're looking for with your brand is to create a lasting impression in the minds of consumers. That way people, when they see your brand, immediately identify with it, know what it is, and it conveys a message of what you're selling and what you represent as a company. So there's three components of what we would consider a strong brand. The first is your brand identity. So that's your logos, your colors, your typography. Those are your visual cues. The second component would be your brand voice. This is your brand's personality. So it's more how you would speak as your brand. And the third component would be kind of your brand values. And this is kind of communicated through your brand identity and your brand voice, but your brand values is kind of your core mission and what you as a company want to bring. So that's the three components of a strong brand, and we'll go into them in a little bit. So why is branding important? If you take a look at the two images to the right, both of these are bottles of wine. So one of them is a branded bottle of wine and one of them is completely unbranded. And we're going to talk about just like the points kind of to the left here. Branding is important firstly because it builds trust and credibility. If you were to walk into a store and you've got this first bottle versus the second, the first bottle makes you think that the person's putting more effort into the wine versus the second bottle, you might not even fully know that that is wine. Maybe it's vinegar, maybe it's not doing a good job of communicating exactly what it is, even though it's in that bottle. So just even having a label on it helps build trust and credibility in your brand. The second is differentiating yourself from competitors. So the first bottle here, again, has a font that's kind of like a serif font. It looks kind of a little fun and elegant versus if you were to have another bottle of wine that maybe had more of a sans font on it, so something that's more rounded or modern looking, like two different users might be kind of pulled towards those two different bottles of wine. Customer loyalty and retention. So if I was to purchase this first bottle or the second bottle of wine, maybe the next time I go to the store, would I go back to this unbranded bottle of wine or would I go and maybe purchase something that has a little bit more flair? Branding does help with customer loyalty and retention. It brings people back and it helps them identify and feel like it's a part of their own story as well. It also increases the perceived value of your brand and your products. So unbranded, again, where does this bottle come from? Who makes this bottle? There's no story. It's just a lot of guesswork for your customer. And your customer doesn't want to be guessing. As soon as your customer is asking questions, it's not helping your own personal brand story or helping sell your product at all. So having something that's like labeled, branded, kind of creates that story and that narrative, helps justify actually like higher price points. If you again were to walk into a store and those two bottles were there, you would expect the unbranded bottle to be much less than the branded bottle. So just kind of stuff like that is why branding is important. So now we're going to talk about the 4 steps to building a strong brand. The first step is research and analysis. The second one is defining your brand. The third one is designing your brand elements. And the fourth one is implementing those steps within your brand. So we're going to just keep going back to kind of that same example that I used at the beginning. But the first part about creating a really strong brand is researching and analyzing your target audience, as well as your competitors. So who are the people that are going to be purchasing your product? What do these people do for a living? Why do these people buy products kind of in this field? So understanding kind of the why and what draws consumers to your product. So once you know who these people are, this might help you create decisions down the road on, like, using this as again as an example, maybe the color of wine bottle or the color of packaging that your product comes in because it appeals, maybe this pink bottle, for instance, to the right appeals to only two of these three target audience. So we want something that appeals to all three. That way you're really reaching kind of as broad of a group as you can, understanding your target audience, as well as analyzing other competitors in the industry. What are they using? What's their stats on how they're buying more things from this user is always kind of just good to know. And it could help you again with packaging and just deciding elements for your brand that maybe you haven't fully considered yet. The number two is going to be defining your brand. So defining your brand, this is just talking about what your unique value is that you are bringing to your customer and just articulating it. So this could be writing down a message for your brand. So just kind of like a key takeaway, like I wrote an example down here. So maybe the unique value proposition of this wine bottle brand would be unwind with the crisp light flavors of our locally crafted Pinot Grigio, each sip transporting you to a fresh blooming garden. So that kind of tells the potential purchaser what they could experience with this wine. And then simplifying it with your messaging. So now you want a tagline that hones in on that unique value offering. So a good tagline for this made up product could be sip into serenity. And then as you're creating social posts, newsletters, or even labels on the back of like this product, just using like a tone that's kind of friendly and inviting and elegant for what would encompass this brand. So that's kind of your brand messaging and tone of voice and how that plays effect into your products and your branding. The third is going to be designing brand elements. So with this example in particular, again, going back to your target audience, what does your target audience like? What appeals to all three of these users? So we know that this tulip one is what was picked and goes for all these users, but here's some other examples of what you might have tested with your target audience or even asked your target audience what they like best or what they like better. Because we want to make sure that whatever graphics and stuff that we're using appeal to the widest range of our target audience group. Once we create that logo, those graphics that we're going to be using, and just that visual identity, keeping it consistent and making sure that we're either using it or those same elements across the media that we're using. The fourth one is just implementing it, just making sure that wherever you're pulling those logos and those graphics, you can take them in different ways, whatever your colors are that you ended up picking, whatever your fonts are kind of with your brand, just making sure that those are consistent in everything that you do. That way your consumer doesn't get confused that it's not you. Because then what happens is when you create a story with all of these elements, when your consumer sees that element or sees that graphic, they know already that it's from your brand. And it makes them think again of your brand, of your products, and it just kind of like it creates like a really nice cohesive experience for your consumer. And just an important point here too, making sure that like as a small business owner, you're going to be potentially subcontracting or different people to do maybe different stuff that you don't do. So you might hire a marketing agency to create a graphic for you, or you might hire someone like a kid down the street to do a flyer for you or something. So if you're outsourcing anything, just making sure that everyone is trained on how to properly touch your brand. And by that, I mean like providing them with the color codes that you selected, the fonts that you've selected, maybe even just a few images, like a mood board or something even would be helpful just to have. So that way, as you're introducing other people to your brand and other people are working with your brand, that they properly do that for you, if that makes sense. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies now that we know how to implement a proper brand. So these are 4 branding strategies specifically for a small local business owner. We'll be talking about them in the next slides, but the first one is leveraging local connections. Second one is utilizing social media and your online presence. Third one is ensuring a really good customer experience as well as service. And then the fourth one is consistently storytelling with those values and with that tone that you've set for your brand. So the first one is leveraging local. This would look like building partnerships with other local businesses that complement your brand. They could also be competitors with your brand. Like, because a lot of the times, especially when you're at a small business level, sometimes partnering with multiple people, that way you can have events centered around your type of product and expose your product to more people is typically a really good thing. Another thing that you can do to leverage local stuff is by participating in community events, coming to events in person. It could be going to festivals, it could be going to kind of those markets, as well as coming to and networking through like local, like online platforms. This is a great way to meet people and get your foot in the door in some ways. The second one is going to be utilizing social media and your online presence. So for this one, we just want to make sure again that those same components that we made for our brand, we are using them and they speak in every single piece of media and content that we're releasing for other people to see. Because again, even if it's like a social post or like a YouTube thumbnail or whatever, it needs to speak immediately to the consumer if they've seen us before, that it's like, oh, that's that product or that's that company. And that just helps again with your story and people resonating with it and even sharing it and remembering it. So it's all a good thing. Another one is just engaging with community on social media platforms. So a good one for this one is, I would say, like Facebook groups are great to network within Facebook groups. You can find lots of local stuff. And I would just like type in a few keywords that make you local. So if you're in Durham, maybe writing Durham. And if you're in winemaking, writing like winemakers group or something, it should pop up a few things. If there's nothing for Durham, it usually does pull surrounding areas because the algorithms got pretty decent for searches on that. Another strategy is ensuring a really high level of customer service. This is a lot of the time what people's pain points are with large businesses and large corporations is that it's not personal. So just making sure that your customer interactions are personal, but also that they reflect kind of that branding that you've done. So kind of creating that personal relationship while further articulating those brand values and that messaging that you've set, as well as collecting and responding to customer feedback not only makes the customer feel like you care if you're following up and asking them how they liked something or how a product is performed over the years, it also gives you a lot of information on maybe things that you could be changing about your product to make it better. So that is a great strategy for branding in general. Storytelling is another one that's a huge consistent thing to have across the board. You can use it to connect with customers so you can ask questions or even bring up the fact that you've been doing this for X amount of years, or this is a part of your story that you love making this product and that you're looking for kind of new people to explore trying your product. And you're collecting kind of new feedback from the broader customer base, and that too will help you. And then just creating content that reflects your brand value. So again, that's just kind of that consistent messaging. This slide would be helpful even to screenshot, and maybe we can even share it to participants after this is over. But this is just a good kind of like bullet point, like checklist of kind of the next steps that you can take after this presentation, just to review your own branding. And like just like some like key takeaways on, okay, like who like what's my branding looking like right now? And how's my logo looking? Do I use elements or design elements in any of my posts or any of my content? Like, and by design elements, I mean like it could be like a little like flower or like a line or like a circle, like those are kind of design elements. And then just going back to kind of like who you are as a business, what your unique values and offerings are, who your current target audience is, and then who your target audience could be, even if you wanted to like maybe added a new product or like slightly different. Sometimes just reevaluating kind of where you are is always a good step to take. And then again, like developing and updating your brand elements. So just ensuring that you've got the same sort of typography used across everything that you touch, same kind of color palette, that your logo's on the things that you present. And then just engaging again with community through social media and local events. So just kind of like putting that on your checklist of things to do, and then gathering customer feedback. And if you don't have a process for that, just like how you're going to be gathering customer feedback, whether that's like reaching out to someone that you know has bought a few times via a direct message if you have that kind of relationship with them, or if it's an email kind of feedback, if that's something that you collect and you have emails and stuff for too. All right. So if you have any questions or anything, you can always email us at info@localstreet.ca, as well as this video should be on our YouTube after this. And our website also has a ton of local resources at www.localstreet.ca. And give us a follow too if you haven't done that at localstreet.ca at Instagram. But does anyone have any questions or anything regarding branding or maybe some strategies that they've tried or need some extra help with? I think you're muted.
It said that you muted me. But I just
Oh,
said thank you. No,
okay,
that was
great.
super, yeah, that was super helpful. And yeah, honestly, to anyone listening, don't hesitate to reach out, even if you are watching the recording. So just super happy to answer any questions, and the team can definitely sort of support you in lots of different ways there.
That's okay. Always happy to help. And thanks so much for coming out today and for supporting kind of local street as well as yourselves. Like I feel like coming to stuff like this is just like a good little refresher for those of us that need it, or I feel like it's just always good to kind of keep stuff like this front of mind. So thank you for coming. Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.